Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. William Butler Yeats might not have known it over 100 years ago when he published The Second Coming, but he perfectly summarized Joe Abercrombie's The Wisdom of Crowds, which I am reviewing today. In this video, it is the conclusion to the Age of Madness trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. Now, I want to start out by saying that this will be a spoiler-free review, and I will include links to my reviews of the first two books in the trilogy, A Little Hatred and The Trouble with Peace. Also, for those of you who want to see me talking about spoilers, I recently had a discussion with Mike from Mike's Book Reviews, full of spoilers about The Wisdom of Crowds, The Age of Madness, and First Law. And that video should be coming out fairly soon. So, yeah, if you're interested in spoilers, that is a place to go. And I had a fantastic time talking with Mike about just all the characters and deaths and tragedies and directions and surprises that are included in this book. But this review will be spoiler-free. And just allow me, please, a moment to gush. Because if you've been following the channel for a while, you probably know that I am definitely an Abercrombie fan. I just think he is a fantastic writer with great insight into human psychology. But for me, The Wisdom of Crowds is not just brilliant, but Abercrombie's very best. It is his best development of characters, his best incorporation of themes, and it is all done in a trilogy that goes way beyond entertaining, which is great in and of itself, nothing wrong with entertaining, but this goes way beyond entertainment into the timeless realm of stories that speak to universal human experience and what makes us tick. So yeah, I was just so impressed by this, and I think Abercrombie gets people. He might even like them a little bit, I suspect. Even though he does show us at our most ugly and awkward and soiled, he somehow manages to get us to care about these characters. And he does it a lot of the time through his impeccable humor. And the fact is, we somehow identify with these very flawed people. So, you know, I cringed at many moments, I laughed, and I cried even a bit while reading The Wisdom of Crowds. Just a phenomenal book. And at the end, I felt a powerful sense of melancholy. And I would also say catharsis. This is what the best books deliver, a sense of catharsis. Like I'd been through something incredible and ineffable. The Wisdom of Crowds, it just brought this trilogy to a perfect conclusion for me. And it was not an ending, though, that you could call wrapped up and tied with a bow. It is messy. And it is an ending that, like real life, left me feeling actually dissatisfied in some ways. Yet in admiration for how compelling the ending was, I could not disagree with Abercrombie's choices, even though I was kind of sad about some of them, and that is classic Abercrombie. He's not going to give you that warm and fuzzy ending. But, you know, it just seems like he's following the advice of, the advice of Logan Ninefingers, you know? You have to be realistic about these things. So, I mean, just starting right with the title of the book, The Wisdom of Crowds, I mean, it's just such a brilliant and suggestive title. I love how Abercrombie quotes from places and puts those quotes inside his book as kind of epigraphs and little nods and, you know, hints as to the theme. And certainly The Wisdom of Crowds is a big hint as to the theme of this book and the Age of Madness trilogy as a whole, Age of Madness. Kind of what I was talking about in that Yeats quote from The Second Coming. This is a time of dissolution. This is a time of things falling apart. This is a time of class warfare. And it's a time when all the oppression of centuries has built up and built up and built up until it has exploded into a period of absolute chaos and destruction and misery. So there are some big social themes in here, all about class and exploitation. It is positively Dickensian in that sense. And some of the best 19th century social writers like Dickens and Elizabeth Gaskell and others made some very important observations, not only about society, but about humanity in their books. And I would put Abercrombie's work right up there with them in many ways. It's just a fantastic commentary on humans and questioning what is the ideal society. Does democracy work? Do revolutions bring about positive? Can they bring about positive change? Or we just go back to the same old, same old? So just questions that arise from history, from the French Revolution, from industrialism and capitalism. And when we saw the exploitation and oppression of the past under feudalism become exploitation and oppression on a scale undreamed of hitherto. So, he just captures all of that so well in this very fast-paced and very entertaining and at the same time very deep book. I really love how, for me, Abercrombie has grown as a writer with every book. And a lot of that has to do with incorporation of theme. And that was definitely there in the very first books, but I feel like he's gotten more and more skilled at it. And so this has me, wondering about issues that are very relevant to the present. There's a lot of anger in Age of Madness. There's a lot of xenophobia. There's a lot of demagoguery and even fascism. And these are things that I think the world is wrestling with at this moment. There's, a lot of that stuff and a lot of tribalism and hatred of the other and so on and so forth. And this tends to happen in times of crisis, in times of scarcity. So yeah, it's a story of social dissolution, people judging and hating and killing. So very relevant. And I think it even questions what it means to be a human. Are we noble? Or are we beast-like? Are we driven purely by selfishness? And these are questions that I think you could say are coming from a cynical place in a way. And if this is still grimdark, and I think that's up for debate, but that kind of cynicism in a way is typical of grimdark. But at the same time, Abercrombie, as I said, makes us care about these characters who make all kinds of disastrous and selfish choices, and sometimes noble choices. That's in there too. So I just love what he does in here. Now, in terms of the setting, this First Law world has, for me, been getting richer and richer. I love the North the most. I feel like that's where Abercrombie's in the sweet spot, if you will. That's his wheelhouse, I think, the North. Just love the sense of humor up there and the way the characters relate to each other and to the outside world as well. There's a kind of naivete to the people of the North and an earthiness to them that I really enjoy, and especially in contrast to the people of Adua and what's going on down there and what happens there. If you've read the first two books, that things have been coming to a boiling point here, and it's just wow. Huge climax in here. It's interesting because a lot of the real action happens kind of in the second half of the middle of the book, if that makes any sense. But there's a lot of really important things that happen at the end as well. So just great stuff. The action is absolutely Abercrombian at its best. And there is such a breadth to this as well, to the action and everything else. There's battle and there's personal stuff. And there's even a birthing scene that had me absolutely biting my nails. It was just a brilliant thing. And you can tell that Abercrombie has definitely consulted the women in his life to give us a very realistic portrayal of birth. So it wouldn't be Abercrombie if it weren't realistic. So just really good stuff. I'm just so impressed with this book. And what it always comes down to with Abercrombie is the characters. And they are as vivid as ever, as brilliantly realized, and somehow sympathetic. And yeah, they're very deeply flawed, and some of the characters I love make terrible, selfish decisions that end up causing terrible harm and destruction. And there are characters that I loathe, that I can't stand, but then there are aspects of them that speak to me. And that's just a really amazing thing that the very best authors can do with their characters, that they inhabit the reader, and that the reader can see themselves in the characters. And even in some of the very worst Abercrombie characters, I can see myself at times. But yeah, it's just such good stuff. And, I'm going to miss reading these characters. Hopefully I'll see some of them again if Abercrombie revisits this world. I certainly hope he does. I'm a little bit nervous about how he could possibly improve on Age of Madness. It is my favorite First Law trilogy arc, and Age of Wisdom of Crowds is my favorite First Law book at this moment. It really is. I don't think that's going to change with time. I just think it's such a brilliant book. So yeah, these characters, Leo and Savine and Rika and Orso and Gunnar Broad and Vic, and some of the tried and true, the characters we've been seeing for so long in many of the books like Shivers and Bremer den Gorst and just too many to name, and they are just so brilliantly realized. And I'm going to miss the characters, particularly the ones that I know I won't be seeing again. And, Abercrombie, you ripped out my heart here and you stomped all over it, but I'm glad you did, because you made this such a compelling and powerful and weirdly beautiful story. So yeah, this is definitely going to be one of my top 5 reads of the year. It is vying for first place even. Too much to say really, but I cannot strongly enough emphasize how wonderful this book is, and I completely endorse it. And I urge you to read. If you haven't read First Law yet, you probably should start with the original trilogy, but you'll want to zip right through those books because they are just such great reads. And that's it for now for me. And I hope you've enjoyed this. And if you find this kind of content interesting, you love talking about fantasy, especially really great fantasy like Abercrombie's, then please consider liking and subscribing. Until next time.